on the committee itself. Do I need a motion to start? I'm never gonna get these Robert's rules. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and start then. I'm gonna mute in between when I'm talking. I had to be in meetings downtown, so I had to find a coffee shop to have this, to do this call. So I'm gonna apologize if it's a little bit loud. So let's go ahead and get started. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes from the September meeting?
Motion to approve.
Do you have a second?
I'll second.
Beautiful. Any discussion? All right, all in favor? Aye. Nina? I think I have to roll call. Nina? Rebecca?
Yes.
Christine?
Yes.
Meredith?
Yes. So just as a suggestion, we can always do this. I also serve on the Commission on LGBTQ Youth, and they do voting on Zoom by raising your hand with the Zoom function. So you can actually just see it really quickly.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, so I just offer that as an option so that we don't have to call people's names, but we can still get everybody's vote on record.
I love that idea, particularly because the meetings are recorded.
Yep.
So I'm going to back up for 1 second. I apologize. I went right from the finance meeting. I know that Nina and Shai and Tina did too, and then right into this one. So I didn't even say hello. How's everybody's Thursday going? In my mind, it's still Wednesday, which I wished a bunch of people happy Wednesday till like noon. How's everybody doing?
I also
Good.
thought today was Wednesday, so it's on a holiday week. It's hard.
It is hard. I will say I'm grateful to be going out of town this weekend. So that is exciting. It's my Friday also.
Where are you going?
It's the end of Women's Week. So I'm going to go bask in a few days. And like the worst week to take off ever, which is exactly when you should be off for one day. I thought, you know what, all this stuff's going to be here on Monday. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it.
Well, say hi to P-Town.
So I'm going to wish everybody a happy Wednesday. All right. So let's go.
You're muted, Sarah.
You're muted.
Of course it did. Of course it did. Okay. I have a question about the strategic plan and the bylaws. The strategic plan hasn't been updated since 2020, which we all know what happened, that the world sort of stopped then. And we talked about at the last two executive committee meetings, the bylaws and the strategic plan being the two places where we could have an opportunity to memorialize in writing a shift to centralize equity in the work that we do. And they're both due to be redone. We also talked about having some of the consultant dollars that we had already earmarked in the budget specifically to get some help in having those policies reviewed. So in terms of next steps, what I don't want is every executive meeting we talk about, hey, we all talked about this, and then, but how do you do the work in between? Who was here when we developed the last strategic plan? Because my understanding was that was done in the executive committee and then brought to the full commission. How did that work happen, and what would you recommend? How did that happen?
So Meredith can also speak to this because and Shai, I don't know if you had joined by then. Yeah, so Shai in her capacity as a former commissioner can also speak to this, but basically everybody broke down the portions of the strategic plan as to, for example, the different functions and committees that we have. So I remember being a person who was working on the program and planning portion of the strategic plan, and we had a commissioner who's no longer a commissioner, Melissa, who sort of led the charge, and then she directed us to take different steps. So first we would outline our what are these things like imperatives, action steps, and timeline, and then we wrote, or like first our goals, then our imperatives, then our action steps and timeline. And we did that each in committees. And then we would devote like long portions of the full commission meetings as we arrived at our, milestone steps with the drafting to discuss and approve. And it was a slog. So I don't know that that was the best process. That's how we did it last time. And we certainly came out with a product. And as I recall, there was staff work on the back end that Jill and the staff at that time were working to sort of like consolidate and synthesize everything that they were getting from the various subgroups that we're working on, like, each of the committees and then the other functions that are separate from the committees. So Meredith and Shai, I don't know any of that was wrong or you have other stuff to add, but please jump in.
I just
Let's
want
not do
to,
that again. Just saying, let's not do that again. Oh, sorry.
so what would you do differently? If you were going to do it again after going through, I mean, any words, like I'm looking at all three of your faces, and the word slog and the words dedicated an exorbitant amount of time during full commissions meeting, that sounds very painful. So what would you do differently?
So I don't want to speak for everyone, but I do agree with the fact that we should bring in a consultant, because one of the main problems that we had, it was because it was the sister commissioner that was kind of leading us and telling us how to do it and where to go. And then it started at the planning meeting, and then it went on and on and on, and we had to go through they wanted different, it was just like 4 different questions that each committee was asked, and we had to put in, hours of type in. And then when we got back to it was like, okay, well, we don't like that, and we don't, and it was just like, really, so if we can get a consultant in and have that consultant review what we've done and kind of give us an idea of thought, what we're missing, what's not missing, what we can improve on, I think that would be the best fit, because it was tedious, it was drawn out, and I'm passionate about things, but not strategic plans, and yeah, so it was not fun.
Yeah, it really wasn't. I think, ultimately there were too many cooks in the kitchen. And I think having a consultant who, I'm thinking in particular of the consultant that we've been working with, is her name Sherry? I think she's fantastic. And I don't know if this is exactly in her wheelhouse, but it seems like it might be. And she sort of has gotten to know us as we are transitioning. And I wonder if we might reach out to her as a potential person. I don't know if she does more just like facilitation and leadership direction or whatever she was doing with us, but she seemed to really understand our growing pains and where we wanted to go, has seen us through about a year or so, maybe now, I don't know exactly how long, but my fear of sending out to a consultant is just that the consultant directly before her, somebody that we had like sent out an RFP for, who presented findings at our June 2021 meeting, just really didn't, in my mind, get our group and where we were going. And I thought that it was a waste of money and time, unfortunately. So I'm excited to see Marianne. Hi, Marianne. And I do think it's a great idea to have a consultant who can interview with commissioners and staff to get more updated information. But I hope that we can find somebody who also understands our commission a little bit and isn't starting from a complete blank slate.
So can I piggyback on Sister Rebecca and say, yes, she's the perfect one, especially because she did that crazy retreat with you guys and talked about the descriptions and the policies and borders and gray lines. And I think she would be the perfect fit because she already knows how we move and we ebb and flow, and if we can get her to do that, I'm right there. I'll support.
So I also love that plan. The caveat I might offer is when I look at this and I'm looking at it through sort of a business lens, is that so myself as a CEO, I'm going to outlive my board, right? Because my board turns over in board terms and those things shift. Ideally, if I do my job right, I'm sort of the one that's been championed with implementing the vision and then continuing to sustain it and keep that integrity. And so my strategic plan starts with me and my team. Then it goes to the board for tweaking. And so I'm wondering if we have a consultant though that actually works directly with Shaitia first to get the meat of it done, right? We already know what our charter is. But I'm wondering if we pair Sherry and an equity consultant, that they're looking at it from day one. So the last thing we want to do is write this whole plan and then send it to a women's group of color and say, hey, can you make sure that we got this right at the end? It just is so after the fact that if we can pair those together to say, when we write it, everything that we're doing is centered in equity, pairing those together with Shaitia and having them come back to us as executive committee first. And then going to the commission. What do you think about that? Still, the meat of the writing is still on the side of the executive director and the consultants, but then, okay, we're good. Does everybody like that? I mean, and so I'm getting heads from the commissioners who we just all got off the hook with doing a whole bunch of writing and now we're just reviewing. So I also love that plan. However, that's a bunch of writing for you. If I'm you, my thought is I would way rather control the plan that I'm gonna be responsible for implementing than have somebody else dictate it to me, but that's me. So what are your thoughts on that approach?
Question before we go further, are we updating or are we rewriting? Because I need that to figure out to answer your question. Are we updating the strategic plan? Are we rewriting the strategic plan? What? Give me a little bit. Which of those two?
So this is just my opinion. I can be talked out of it. When I looked at it, I would rewrite it. That from my first pass, I would probably rewrite it. Using our charter as the framework, but I would do it differently.
So I understand the rewrite piece, but at the same time, not everybody translate our enabling language, not charter, enabling language the same way. So that was one of the problems with the strategic plan we have now. And I'm concerned that if you don't get someone that understands that we're a special state agency with legislative enabling language, we're not a nonprofit, we're not a for-profit, we're not a, you know what I'm saying? So everybody looks at it differently. So maybe I get what you're saying about rewrite it, but they have to understand what program and planning does. They have to understand the legislative committee. They have to understand what the commission is about, so maybe that's my concern. That's why I was asking. So can we ask them to look at the old one and then come forward with new thoughts? Because maybe that'll give them a little background about how to, or what, how, yeah. Because I'm just concerned
for
that
sure.
it'll drag out.
No, and we don't want somebody to go to school, right, to have to go get another degree to learn this. So that's why I'm thinking if it's somebody that's paired with Shy, we would hope that our executive director gets it. And using that as the foundation, I wouldn't I think they should see the current one. Maybe they look at it and go, hey, it just needs to be tweaked.
Right.
But give them the sort of latitude if they think it should be rewritten. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but for sure, give it to them, for sure.
Okay. So I support you on that. Okay.
Okay, great.
I see Rebecca's hand up here.
Thanks, folks. And I do think that Shy was ready to speak and didn't get a chance because we got off on answering Meredith's question. So I want to make sure that we hear from Shy as to whether this process will work for her. But yeah, I agree that not only was the strategic plan that we resulted in 2020 not necessarily the product of the best process maybe, and not necessarily the product of a cohesive writing, but so much about what we do has changed since COVID. And I think so much about how we want to move forward will have changed. Like the vision that we have was really altered after we did this document. So I think that there's a lot of reasons to use it as a source material, but I think there's going to be a lot of sources in addition. So I don't know, Meredith, if I would say that like definitively it should be rewritten versus revised, but I think that like I would not be surprised, and in fact I would be upset if it weren't very different from where we started from. So that's sort of my perspective, and then turning it back to the group.
Shaitia, do you want to add?
I think I would love that idea of pairing me up with somebody to kind of start it, and I would the way that I work, I would start with the strategic plan that we did have and go from there, because I know there were some elements that we did achieve. And it's not really relevant to us anymore because we crossed that off the list. So I would start there. The other thing I just want to share for the group, in case, you know, newer folks might not know, we went through, I don't know if it was for this or if it was for annual planning in 2020, but we went through a process where we interviewed with a lady who built out this report of like areas where we can improve and maybe focus. And that's how we came up with the different staff members and the different ways that we can kind of break down the committee work. That's another like historical document I think is important to this work. And then also I want to remind us that we're working on a website build, and part of that discovery is talking about things that are on our strategic plan, like our values. What do we do and what do we stand for? And I think all of these pieces would be integral into building a strong strategic plan for the next year, 2, 3, 4, 5. You know, that's all.
Great, thank you. I think the document you just referred to with the other analysis is the one that Rebecca said was a waste of time, but it is a source document. I agree, and there were some nuggets of sort of insight there. Rebecca.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to be clear that I think that document needs to be taken with a grain of salt, because I don't want to say that it was like a total waste of time. I'll roll that back a little, but I did think that that particular consultant did not ultimately really make observations or recommendations that were in line with my perspective of what was going on. And I'm just one of 19 commissioners and, you know, many additional staff as well. So it's totally understandable if other people found more value in that document, but I did not find it to be like, you know, particularly helpful in terms of either diagnosing or recommending. But I think it's worth what it's worth, and it's worth it to look at it.
So if everyone's comfortable, my thought is that Commissioner Miller and I meet with Shaitia every Tuesday, is that when we meet next Tuesday that we flesh out a timeline of what we think is realistic and then bring that back. And then because we're doing it that way, is I also want to explore, when we talked about doing equity in what we're doing, is that there were opportunities to get training. I know that we reached out to Gamal and Tanisha saying, this is what you do for a living, what would you recommend? So they both kind of came back with some of the things that they do as an organization. I'd like to also do a meeting with them to say, okay, we're doing this piece as one component of it, and this is going to memorialize in the documents of what we're doing. What should we do in the meantime? And how do you do that with a group that has dynamics like ours? When it comes to, we meet once a month, everyone's a volunteer, you know, we have already set meetings. How would they recommend implementing that? So I'd like to do one more meeting in between now and the next executive meeting, so that I want to just see a little bit of progress, and I'm not exactly sure where to start. So I'll reach out to them if everyone's good with that. Hello, Commissioner Miller. To catch you up really quickly, what we just decided is that the strategic plan is long overdue, as are the bylaws. And having Shaitia work with you and I next Tuesday to flesh out a timeline, have her work with a consultant that we use to do our annual meeting, and then also pair with an executive or a consultant that specializes in equity and inclusion, and taking the first pass at recommending back to this committee a structure, a format, content, a frame, et cetera, to come back to us. So the majority of the writing isn't happening library, that 19 cooks in the kitchen all editing the same document and doing and undoing things and trying to get it done, and then using that as the framework as we're building the new website, so that those same categories are all tying. So I mean, the way that I see it is that the strategic plan should then guide the website, and those goals should guide our work. It should also guide the evaluation of the executive director, right? So all those goals all align, and then those goals should also tie to the goals for the staff that they're evaluated on. So all of that should be one kind of tether, but we just don't have it tight yet. So I think having Shaitia lead and start that and then come back to us was where we landed. Would you have anything to add to that? All right, I think she's still on mute. I'm going to assume she's transitioning, so let's go on. I'll park that question. Aisha, if you want to add more about that, just raise your hand and we'll swing back to it. In the meantime, let's go on with the agenda. The 25th anniversary. So Danella has committed to chairing that, which I'm super excited about. Literally, and I think I said this in the meeting the other day, is that in like a 3-minute conversation, she had more ideas than I think I've had my whole life, because fundraising is not my thing. So I'm really excited about that. She and I have not had an opportunity to meet. We are meeting tonight in person. So as soon as I have that meeting, I think we'll come back and then have Danella come back to the group with what her ideas are. We're just a little bit early because we're not talking till after this meeting. Shai, do you want to give an update about the website? And explain while you're on it, just hit 2 things. Do that and then explain why we're meeting on the 18th with the Caucus of Women's Legislators.
Sure. So today, actually, Ellen and I met with Jess. Her last name is escaping me, but she is the founder of Tugboat Consulting, which is the organization we chose to do this whole website build and explore logo and maybe a 25th logo. But to do this project, she has the capabilities and the flexibilities to really do anything and everything that we had talked about this past spring. And she's actually came in really cheap based off of the proposal that we kind of put together. So we are working with her to come up with an agreement to sign and hoping to start early November with discovery and looping in folks about what the project will look like, the timeline, what we want to make sure that we hit. All of those things should start in November. So moving right along. The name of the consultant is Tugboat.
Shai, will you share the in the executive, I'm sorry, in the full commission meeting, will you link the agenda item about website to their website so that everybody knows who we're working with? Thank you.
Yes. And then the other item Chairwoman had asked me to talk about is on the 18th, which is next Tuesday at 1:30. It's supposed to be an hour, 1:30 to 2:30. We'll be meeting with the leaders of the Massachusetts Caucus of Women Legislators, the group that is doing the reappointments or the appointments for the commission. They asked me with the chair, the vice chair, and their appointees. That meeting is, I do have a link if folks want to join. I'm happy to share it. But that will be on the 18th.
Great. Commissioner Clark, hi. Happy Wednesday. I know it's Thursday, but I didn't until just a minute ago. We had just skipped through the 25th anniversary, celebrating that you had agreed to lead it. And I said we might be a little bit premature in that update because you and I are meeting tonight. But if there's anything else you wanted to add to that, I will pause here and let you do that. Nope.
The one question I had that I should have asked yesterday, Commissioner Tuitt, is the plan to bring the national conference to New England?
Yeah.
Okay, and do you have us? I think one of the things we want to be careful of, Commissioner Tuitt and Shaitia, is when these other things are going to be happening, there may be an opportunity to either piggyback, partner, or we don't want confusion in the marketplace. So I know we have Commonwealth Heroines, if we know the date for that, and then if Commissioner Tuitt knows the date for the convention, do we want to somehow piggyback on that? So that was the one thing I wanted to ask. So it's good to know it is coming. And when she says New England, is it coming to the Commonwealth or just to New England or somewhere else?
So it's gonna be, we are pulling together our meeting, so it's gonna be New England, included Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, Connecticut, Rhode Island, because we are trying to work with the states that have been defunded to kind of revitalize them. So it's like a 2-4. So we are going to call that meeting together. We usually have our conference in convention in July, but once we meet with everybody else, we're going to figure out what day we're going to do that. So I'm paying attention to here also, so I'll know what day and where we're going, because I don't want to bump with Commonwealth and I don't want to bump with anything else. So that way we don't get everyone in attendance that we're trying to do, you know? Yeah. So I'll be back.
If we could look at those dates, Shaitia, the other date, the big date to watch for in 2023, where you're going to have the president of these United States and vice president in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And I don't have the dates, but it's also in July. And Meredith, you don't want to bump with these people either, is the NAACP National Convention is coming to the Commonwealth in the city of Boston in July. And because we are 1 year away from an election, the president and vice president will be here. So I'm just trying to think about what is going on in Massachusetts from a big perspective. So you're not asking the vice president, which is who I want, to come back here multiple times. So if the NAACP convention, but you got to be careful, Meredith, because I think their convention is around the same time as the conference. Do we either piggyback on that or try to capitalize on these people coming in for these national conference? And those are the only two I know about. There may be other national conferences. We probably could check with the BCEC. I could ask my friend Helena there. Yeah.
Yeah, what my goal is, like all of the contacts that wanted us here before, I'm gonna reach back out to them again, because BCEC was in it, Mass Tourism was in, Boston Convention was in, so I'm gonna reach back out to everyone because I had promised them if we do come back to this side that I would let them know. So that's the goal, to do all of that once we convene our first meeting. And the first meeting, like I said, we're shooting out the email now to try to have the first meeting within the next 2 to 3 weeks. So we'll know what we're doing and where we're going and start looking at the dates. So that's one of the goals. Everybody's on board. We just need to meet now.
So I just, and maybe I could have a seat at that table. I just want to make sure we're not tripping over each other. So Maura Healy doesn't say, oh, Commissioner Tuitt is asking me for a convention and you're asking me for 25th anniversary thing. So I do think there needs to be some coordination, since that is in fact going to be here. Now, it may be that Madam Chair Glenn Smith says, you know what, no, I really want us to have this before the end of the fiscal year, or Shaitia says, well, this may really make sense to have this piggyback with Commonwealth Heroines or something more aligned with us. But I don't want it to look like members of the same organization are going to the same people, even if it's only for participation. And worse, and I don't know what you're doing, Meredith, or worse if we're asking people for money. Because like I mentioned this to Michelle Wu, to Cara Elliott Ortega, Arts and Culture, they have a budget. And my plan very much so is to ask the Commonwealth and the city of Boston and others for money. So I also don't want us tripping over each other if you plan to ask them for money as if the conference is big, because clearly of all the New England states, we're not the wealthiest, You may want to have it in Connecticut because Connecticut is the wealthiest state, but Connecticut may not be on the verge of having a female governor and lieutenant governor. So it may make sense that it's here, and they may not have a women's commission in the great state of Connecticut, but there's more wealth in Connecticut than in Massachusetts. So long-winded way of saying, I just think we have to be coordinated, because if it's gonna be held here in Massachusetts, even though you're calling it a New England convention, I don't want us tripping over each other. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. That's the goal. We do have, with suggestion on board, is to have a couple of field trip days to a couple of the other states, but the bulk of it will be here in the Massachusetts area. So yeah, so that's the goal, to not trip on and step on the same toes for the same sponsorship and so on. Yeah. So I'll be getting back. All right.
That's what I was just gonna ask. If there's a planning, I assume there's like an ad hoc planning. So if we can make sure we just stay tied in. Great. Thank you. All right, Shaitia, I'm gonna turn it back to you to finish up the next three.
Sure. So the next two items on the agenda are the updating the Mass handbook and the operations manual. I'm gonna start with the handbook piece. I believe Commissioner Clark at the program and planning meeting, we kind of talked about it being a staff start to drafting or updating the handbook. There's just some dated material, I think, in there. And then also as we start to really like nail down these processes with things like the regional appointments, the regional grants, even our comms process and policies. We will be updating that for the handbook and the operations internally. I do have an update for our executive assistant / clerk, Andrea Ratton, is going to be starting on Monday. And she will be kind of lead on that project with the assistance, obviously, of myself and all the other staff. The other thing I think that came up out of the program and planning committee meeting was that there is a regional convening in November. That is going to be on November 30th. And the goal is to look with the regionals, look at the regional handbook and those policies. That too needs to be updated. And I think that can start in-house working with Commissioner Bacht and Commissioner Tuitt. And then as far as the operations manual, staff will be taking responsibility for their areas in drafting procedures and getting those policies in there, working with the finance committee for any policies that they're working on and kind of building it all together. My ambitious goal is to have some kind of draft, something started for both pieces by the end of this month, early November, so that the executive committee will have something to at least glance at in November.
So let's just a piece of advice. If it's ambitious, tell us December. Set yourself up, like be early or be on time, but don't kill yourself. Like if there's something that you feel like that might be ambitious because you're starting from, with a lot and all new people, I would say let's plan on December. If it's ready in November, that's gravy. So and when we meet with the full commission, let's give that's the goal. And if you get it early, awesome. If not, it's okay. Then we start the new year, the new calendar year with policies and procedures in place. And I want to make sure I'm understanding correctly. The operations manual is also going to have outlined things like Tina's role, for example, when you appoint new people to the region, here's the process you follow, like that kind of stuff that everyone's going to all be on the same page on. So we have something to refer to. Great. Okay.
Yeah.
That's good. Okay. So thank you very much. And I'm not sure who received the audit or the letter regarding the women's veterans group. So, and I don't know who's had a chance to read it. Let me just give a quick summary for anyone that didn't. Is when the audit was released for Women's Veteran Services, they found that the Department of Veteran Services was lacking, specifically in its procedures to ensure that identifying and serving women veterans through the network and operations are represented, and had some recommendations. They didn't have the representation in 11-member advisory committee that they were supposed to. They didn't get engagement. They got only 6% of the total 25,000 women's veterans living in Massachusetts, et cetera. So it was a fairly scathing report. And they sent it to all bodies that had anything to do with it, could possibly be impacted by. In the past, what do we do with that? So I'm assuming that we could respond to that or write a letter of support. Do we agree? Is it something that we can't touch? So what do we do once we got something like that?
So let me give you a little bit more on that, Chairwoman Massari. So what happened was Women's Veterans Network and DVS realized that even though we had a Women's Veterans Network in the Commonwealth, we have 25,000 female veterans, but we don't have connections to them. So the Women's Veterans Network annually tries to pull a conference together and other events. The past 2 years, we've done more events to try to get more female veterans out. And so we realized that they still weren't doing enough, because even though the Women's Veterans Network has a steering committee built up of different female veterans across the state, a lot of times they hear us, and a lot of times the DVS still does what DVS wants to do. So at the beginning of the year, they put some money out and they hired a consultant firm to do a survey and to see if Women's Veterans Network was doing what DVS wanted them to do. In this survey, it was, to us, the steering committee, we were like, whoa, you're using us, you're using our emails, you're using our constant contact, aren't you using other entities to find female veterans? And when they gave us their report, it was very evident that they didn't, because out of 25,000, only 600 female veterans responded, right? So when the auditor audited our report and audited the Women's Veterans Network, then they were like, okay, well, what's DVS really doing? But in this process, DVS knew something was happening and that they weren't connecting with veterans in the Commonwealth like they wanted to. So they opened up this grant, not just for female veterans, but a DVS grant for outreach to find veterans. And that was one of the ways that my job, that's how I got the $264,000, because I do a lot of outreach to find female veterans, to find veterans of color and so on. So I was one of the new ones to get this money. Still not enough DVS work to find, because the Commonwealth has a list of 25,000 female veterans. So if you have this list and you don't have a way other than their home addresses, why was that not used? And that's what the auditor was saying. You have this list of 25,000 and you only had 600 respond to the survey. What are you not doing that you can't get more than 600 to respond? And one of the things that they put in the report was their in-person community reach outs. They reached out, one of the events was to us, the steering committee members, right? And the day that they had that meeting with us, the steering committee members, a lot of us couldn't attend. We were at work, and out of, I want to say there's like 15 or 16 of us on the steering committee, they got 6 of us, maybe less than 6 of us, to be at that Zoom meeting. So that wasn't good. And they didn't try to redo it. They didn't try to, so their turnout of community reach out was maybe a 5, a 12, and a 10. So they really weren't doing the work. So we have our meeting tomorrow. That way I can hear what the DVS is saying, what Women Veterans Network is saying, and how they're going to respond to the auditor, which they really can't say anything other than, you're right, we didn't do the right thing. So when Shaitia called me and asked me about the letter and did I know about the article in the press release and the audit's report, I said yes. And how would we respond? It would be hard, not hard, but our response is that should be that we agree with the auditor. We should be assisting or working with DVS and the Women's Veterans Network to seek female who are military attached. A lot of our sisters don't want to identify. And that's one of the problems that's happening, why they're not responding, because of MST and because of PTS and all of these other issues. I have sister veterans who I know are veterans, but they don't identify as veterans. So maybe our statement should be, let's work on seeking these sisters, finding who they are, and supporting them with whatever needs they might have, and attaching them to their benefits, because some of our elder veterans don't even know that they have the rights to benefits, that they have the right to be buried as a veteran, that they have the right to go to the VA. So however, whatever you guys decide, I think, let me see what happens at tomorrow's meeting, and then I could share with you guys where DVS is trying to go with this, so we can try to word a correct statement in support for female veterans across the Commonwealth, because we're out there, we're very vast, but it's just to get them to identify. The identifying is the problem.
So I have two clarifying questions. The first one is, who actually hired the auditor?
DVS.
DVS. Okay.
DVS hired, I forget the name of the company, but I think I shared the Shai, did I send you?
No, we have the report.
Okay, so it was a company they hired to do a survey and a study on female veterans. And when the report was released, the auditor's office read the report, and she was just outraged at what was in the report, because it was our report, DVS's report, Women Veterans Report, and it basically said we failed in trying to do what we paid them to do. Yeah. So it was.
Yeah, it was definitely rough. I read it. So other than a statement, how would this tie into our work? Is there will you know more tomorrow in terms of what should we actually do with it? So, I mean, it was, here's the report. If you have any questions, email this guy. But does that fit with what we're doing, or do we just issue a statement? So I think I'm just looking for some direction on what our role would be in that.
I would try to have the commission have a conversation with Secretary Poppy. Secretary Poppy is our first female secretary for Veteran Services, and she's been trying to do a lot. I think getting at her table, sitting at her table, having a conversation to see where she thinks that she can take DVS in supporting female veterans, you know, because her push, her movement in DVS here in the Commonwealth will impact the federal stuff that comes in for female veterans. And I think that's what we need to look at.
Thank you. That's helpful. It would also be good to use that network. The way I look at the hearings is that becomes our charge, is what are the women on the ground saying? And that highlights issues. If some of those women came to the hearings, it would give us, I think, further fodder, and it would give us, I think, a little bit more power in terms of why we're getting involved. That would be, and it would be a cool place to exercise those voices. Okay, thank you very much. I just muted myself. Next on the agenda, we're gonna go with the treasurer's report.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Happy not Wednesday. I'm going to get through this as quickly as I can. Just tell me if I'm going too fast for folks, or folks have any questions. So Shai, could you just let me share my screen very quickly so I can show the budget to actual report, please?
It should work now.
Awesome, thank you. And I do apologize. I am going to have to lean on Marjorie a little bit throughout this conversation, just because I had not had time to review it too thoroughly yet this week, but I will make sure to get it done and answer any questions folks might have today in preparation for next week. So this is just for the first quarter for fiscal year 23. And Marjorie, thank you again for highlighting specifically the parts where you're going to see some overages. So the first one here, the first of three, are the contracted salaries for interns. And this covers 4 interns who are actually no longer interning with us. They were working with us back in July. And so that's where you get this overage here. The print chargeback, I'm gonna go to Marjorie for, but let me just jump to the third one quickly. For subscriptions and memberships, this is a little jarring. It was a little jarring to me when I first saw it, but it's because, you know, when you're on annual subscriptions, obviously you just pay it for the year, and, you know, that balances out in total, but this is what we've got now, and then you're not going to see that, you know, going into the future quarters. And so again, coming back to the print chargeback, apologies again, folks, for not being able to review in time for this meeting, but Marjorie, I do appreciate you being on the call. If you could just clarify for folks here what this overage was for, that would be helpful.
Okay, good afternoon, sorry, everybody. So the print chargeback was for the resources for the original. It was originally for FY22, but the order was never put in. When we received the bill and everything else, it was on July 5th. So therefore, it is still under FY23, and it was paid. What we did was, where it has the chargeback, we are going to take the amount from the printing costs, because it all falls from the state within the same E section category. So $2,000 is gonna be removed from the print shop, and then it's gonna put it in the chargeback. So that's how we're gonna close that one. I don't know if Tina, you wanted to say anything about it?
Sure, I'm happy to share. This is for Hampshire Franklin for a resource guide. And back in January, when Jerice was here, the decision that was made at that time was for them, they didn't actually get grant money. The agreement was that they got a resource guide that would be handled in-house. And in-house meant that we have a state printer that we use. So the state printer was used, but there was the timeline wasn't really clear. So we tried to get that pushed before June 30th, but the state printer was also very backed up due to a lot of things they were doing at year end. And our project got pushed early July, which affected when the bill came in. So technically the project, everything was put in June, but they didn't get to it until July. So that's kind of how this fell.
Thank you both for clarifying that. Do folks have any questions on this before I move on to the next item in the report?
I just had a question on the expense. So it's $12,000 over budget, which is okay. We're only in the first quarter. It's not that much considering our overall budget. Can we do for the full commission or maybe for the next meeting a forecast? So what does that do to the rest of our budget? So it's easy to overcome because we're early on and we didn't do a month-to-month budget. We did an annual budget. But then now that we're $12,000 under after the first quarter, or I'm sorry, over, what is that for? What does that look like for the rest of the year? Are we still good? I think that might be a question that would come up.
Okay. And that's just not for, Madam Chair, do you want me to do that for all of the lines as well? Not just the contracted salary ones, but the other ones as well?
I would, yeah, I would do it just for the, for the main categories, just pull it all the way across. So it means that over the next however many months, we're going to spend this much less to make sure that we stay under that. That's a forecast that we're not projecting then to be over budget by 12 grand at the end, that we're gonna right size that and just show where. You could even do it in one large category, like a forecast months, for the other 3 quarters, one column that says this is how we're gonna forecast. So we're planning to get it back. It doesn't matter as much this year, but it will, because we've got an influx of cash, but it will next year when we're pretty much budgeted to the penny. So I'm just trying to set us up for that. That would just be a suggestion.
I am all for working out my kinks now. So thank you, Madam Chair. Any other
To be
questions?
clear, it's not your kink. It wasn't a criticism. I just want to
No.
avoid questions before they come, for sure.
Thank you. Any other questions on this item here? All right, folks. Marjorie and Tina, thank you again. I appreciate it. Oh, sorry, Commissioner Tuitt, I see your hand raised.
I'm sorry. So I understand where it is, but initially, wasn't that coming out of the regional grant line item, though, the regional grants line item? Because when Jerice made the decision to have the resource book printed in-house instead of us giving Hampshire Franklin the regional money to do it, she felt we would be able to get it cheaper because we were using this company. So would that be here at EO4? Would that not fall under the regional grant line? Because that's where it was supposed to come from.
If I can, Treasurer.
Yes, please.
The idea was that it was supposed to be cheaper. However, it was not. The prices were actually more expensive than other vendors we could have went with. Unfortunately, I don't know how that assumption was made, but it ended up costing us more. And the amount comes from the regional allocation. But when we're processing these payments, it comes through different codes, whether it's printing or if it's a commissioner reimbursement for mileage, if it's in-house printing versus going through another vendor printing. So that's how that ended up in a different line. But the amount was definitely, it was allocated, but it was more than what was allocated. Does that make sense?
Okay. All right.
Thank you, Shai. Thank you, Meredith. That's a really good question. Again, just learning the history is helpful here. Any other questions? I just want to do one more roll call on this. Any other questions? Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. On to the next item here on the agenda. Okay, so for regional grants, we actually just had a really thorough conversation, excuse me, in the FineCon committee before this one, talking about the grant proposals. And I just want to give a huge shout out to Tina and Marjorie, and frankly, obviously Shai too, for the work that they did behind this. We never had a process for this, right? Again, it was very much like throw it at the wall, see what happens, and we'll figure it out. And they very quickly, that saying we're like, you're learning how to ride the bike and build at the same time. That's exactly what they did. And Tina spearheaded this effort and essentially putting together and codifying an application that would then be uniform for all regionals, right? And so now the regional commissions were able to essentially, look at the same application, submit the same information to us for us to be able to review it. And I think a way that's less biased, right? And then more, I think, centered into one place. And so out of all of the, for all the regions, you're able to apply up to $2,500. And I believe all but one, the Cape and Islands, are the only ones that apply for 1,500 out of the 2,500. But to sort of be brief here for all of you, there's another conversation here where we're thinking about internship stipends for the regionals, and that is within this $2,500 cap, right? And then even pulling that further back, the 2,500 is one part of the full 5,000 for the fiscal year, right? So, Essex Regional Commission will get $5,000 that they could apply up to for reimbursements. And what we're doing now is splitting it into two sections, right? The fall and the spring. And so the internship reimbursement that we're trying to, finalize as far as a policy goes falls within that grant process. And what I want to give you all a heads up on is that, for the review of the grants, I am going to seek your input of all of you on the EC. Ideally, we are going to finalize this and get a full commission vote, which we will need on Thursday. And so I'm going to essentially work with Marjorie to create a form. All FineCom members are going to put our feedback in there to say, should they get this grant? Yes or no. If no, why not? And then I want the EC members, again, if they're able to review these grants, to submit their feedback as well. We'll compile all of that feedback and then submit it to the full commission next Thursday for a full vote. So I'm going to pause here for questions because I do see Commissioner Clark that your hand is raised. So I'm going to go to you first.
So with apologies, I missed the Finance Committee meeting because something came up in my own organization, and I'm glad that Commissioner Tuitt is here and Commissioner Fleckner. I am concerned that now that we have this influx of cash, there seems to be a lot of support for staff and staff-related things, but not, quite frankly, for commissioners. And I remember when we didn't have a lot of money, right, Meredith? If we went out to Great Barrington or what have you, and I'm a commissioner that's been here, I don't know if it's 8 years now, 7 or 8, where I've never been reimbursed for mileage, for example, even though I could be. I think if you're talking about interns for regions, we need to talk about overnight stays for commissioners. We need to talk about travel for commissioners. We are the commissioners and we are the ones that has to go to hearing and go to testimony. We didn't go out and raise all of this cash for staff or to support staff infrastructure. We are the ones that are supposed to be out there on the front lines, gathering data on the status of women. I, for one, I think it was 2 weeks ago, was invited as one of 20 women leaders to go and speak with our incoming governor. We are the ones that's supposed to be getting the information. So while I'm sorry that I missed the Finance Committee meeting, I think we need to level set or reset, because it is a barrier. I forget where the next hearing is going to be, but I'm getting a little tired of hearing. Yesterday, I heard the same thing. Can we get a consultant for staff to do work? Now I'm hearing about interns for regions, when I remember when we only had 2 staff. And again, I never took advantage of it, but I even remember, right, Meredith, when we drove to Springfield, if we wanted to stay in Springfield or be reimbursed for our parking, we could. There needs to be much more focus on the commissioners who took an oath instead of all of this stuff that support, and I'm talking about the state commissioners, because I also remember when the regional commissions had no money. So for them to get 2,500, and now we're talking about getting them interns, and I, at the last minute, asked, oh, if I come to Provincetown, can I get a hotel? And I was told, oh, that's not in the budget. I was like, well, I'm not doing it, but we need to fix that. And if there's within the budget, we need to fix it now, because commissioners are the ones that's supposed to be gathering the data and reporting back. And there was a time when we had a little bit of money and we went to 4 places across the Commonwealth. Commissioners were reimbursed for travel and I believe overnight stays. Now, I never took advantage of it, but that needs to be fixed.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate the feedback, because that's, where I think for me, like this sort of like very heavy, like policy type, conversations are coming from, right? It's like, oh, so as it stands right now, my understanding of it is that the regionals can decide up to how much they want to spend on interns, if they want to spend it all, or they can spend it on reimbursements for programs, or, they have to submit something and then get it approved. They can't just go and spend it without it getting approved under requirements that are submitted to them before they apply, right? Do you know what I mean? So it's like there are requirements for what needs to basically outline what they can submit for reimbursement, and they can only submit up to that amount. And if they decide they want to use the entirety of that for interns, then that's our time to be able to review it and say, okay, does that fall under the guidelines, right? I joked earlier, but if somebody submits something and says, I want to buy a yacht, right, for Cape and Islands, like, no, that doesn't fall under the guidelines. You're not getting your yacht, right? But again, this is the thing, right? It's that we put out this process. What I think worked really well is that it created a uniform application, right? Where it's not going to work and where we can tweak now moving forward is to say, okay, and that is actually part of the conversation that we've been having around interns is, do we want to set a cap on what regionals can spend for interns, right? And we basically, that then mandates you have to spend X amount, for programs and actually doing the work, and it can only spend X amount for interns, right? My other thought to that, Commissioner Clark, is that this is also an opportunity now too, I think, to think about, again, what policies and procedures are we codifying around reimbursements to state commissioners around travel expenses, around, what is it? Not just travel, but including overnights and hotels and lodging. That's the word I'm looking for, lodging expenses, right? Also for those who need it, maybe childcare expenses, right? Like these are all policies, again, procedures that I want to, think through, what do we want to provide as policy? And then secondly, how much can we afford to provide, right? Because if we're providing for one, we have to provide for all. And I want to make sure that it's done in a fair way. So it's a very long-winded way to say thank you for the input, because I want to know where we're lacking so that we can start to create some procedures around it. I'm gonna go to Commissioner Tuitt and then Chairman Smith.
Thank you, sister. So my question, and I just need some clarity maybe on this internship, and maybe it's something that I did back when we had the regional committee. Well, a couple of the regionals had project ideas they wanted to do. So say, for example, Essex wanted to work on creating a resource book. So they had a young person that they wanted to bring on to work on that project. So they brought the young person on as an intern, and in their regional grant application, they talked about the project and the young person that was going to be working with them to do this project, who was a college student. And so their way of doing internship honorarium was through their regional grant, right? And so I think what it was, the request was $500 or something like that, or $350 or something like that, to have this intern come on board. So if it's something like that they're talking about, and it's a project that they're doing, and they want to bring on a college student to do that, and they want to offer an honorarium to help that college student with whatever, when they go back to school or whatever, then that is something I can support if it's within that 2,000 and it's a project. But if it's, we want to bring interns on and use our regional grant to do that, then I have a problem with that. The regional grants is through for your projects and for the programmatic year, right? So that's my comment on that. I just feel that I think it would, if it's a project and it's part of their programmatic year and they want to bring an intern on to work on that project, I think we could support that, because we kind of set this little, we had put it into play when I was doing that, and Tina and I fine-tuned how they wrote their project item in and wrote that intern in, right? That I could support. But, and I also support what my sister commissioner is saying about travel and lodging. We were able to get reimbursed for our travel, our distance. Overnight stays was a little pushback because we didn't have money. Now we have money and we're going to be in Pittsfield. We shouldn't be asking our sisters to drive all the way back in the middle of the night. Not everybody might have a friend that they can lodge in with for the night. And I do know that this is something we've been talking about from when we were broke. Now we're not broke. So we should be putting that back on your table. Sorry, Nina.
No, don't be, again, that's what I was saying to Chairman Clark, right, it's, you know, I need to know what I don't know so that this does now inform how we moving forward, you know, so don't, to both of you, don't ever apologize for doing that. Chairman Clark, and then I'm going to go to Commissioner Monska, and then there's some comments in the chat I want to make sure to acknowledge as well.
You said Clark, but I think you meant me.
I did, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm on Zoom a little too long right now.
No, and I wanted to make sure that we saw the comment put in the chat that we'd rather see the money go to what's going to get the women that don't have the resources to get there, so babysitting and other things. So I was going to make a suggestion, which is to bring that back to the finance committee to when we're talking about voting on the grants to share what the criteria is. And if it's not clear, to then take that as maybe an objective for the next month, is to clarify all those policies. But what are the criteria? You know, how are we framing it when we approve it? It's just making the process tighter and tighter. I think that the second question regarding lodging, Provincetown was far, Pittsfield is far. We didn't have the money before, so when we made the budget, I think it was done on the precedent that we don't pay for overnight stays. Because we do have money, we didn't fund the travel line the way that we needed to in order to have overnight stays. That said, the budget gets approved as a whole. If the recommendation is that then we move some money into travel so that commissioners can be reimbursed for overnight stay within, you know, let's say it's max $200 a night for a room or whatever that criteria is, then I think the finance committee could say, okay, we'll take it out of here and recommend funding the line here for all the commissioners so that people have more access. I would say that maybe come back to us with that if that's, and I want to make sure, Commissioner Clark, that's what you were recommending, is that we have the money, we should be supporting the commissioners who are volunteering to stay overnight. And if so, would this be the right way to do it, is to have the finance committee come back to us with that and say, we'll move it from here to here so that we can do that.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to respond. Yes, that's what I mean, but I have to say this, and again, I'm so glad that Tewitt and Fleckner is here. Commissioners can't be just asked to, and it was the commissioners, quite frankly, that led this effort. We can't just be asked to go and get the money, and then you're sitting here talking about the staff came up with all of these things. No, we, the commissioners, just as much as we own the revenue, going to get the revenue and advocating for the revenue, we also should really be owning the expense, not staff. I appreciate staff's input, but we should own it, because you know what? If something goes wrong when they open our checkbook and see how something is spent, it's going to be on us. So we need to take a much more active role, and we need to go back to what our mission is. We are here to collect data, not to pay for interns. I'm really disappointed to hear this conversation about spending more money on human capital people versus the women of the Commonwealth. This is very, and I'm sorry I missed the meeting. That's why I wanted to be on the Finance Committee. This is very disturbing to me. And it's going to be further disturbing when the staff is going to look to us, the commissioners, come January or February, to go and sit and testify and advocate for this money. This is very, very concerning to me, this entire conversation. We, the commissioners, must take a much more active role in how the money is spent, because we're going to be the ones that have to answer to it when the public hearings come, right, Marianne? When in January and February, the staff's not going to be up there testifying for interns for regionals. Come on. Sorry, but yeah, that's what I mean. That's what I mean, Sarah. If you have money, wouldn't it make better sense, Marianne, to be able to say, oh, we paid for Commissioner Tewitt to stay in Pittsfield so she could collect the data, and we paid for babysitters, but we paid for interns for region. See, when staff is directing the work, they're gonna do what's gonna be easy to offset for them. We need to flip this.
If I can just add a thought, is that
Marianne,
oh, sorry.
I don't mean to
Yep.
interrupt. I want to respect folks who've been raising their hands as well.
Yep,
and then I can
you're right.
back to Commissioner Monska.
I think I'd have to agree with Commissioner Clark in saying that, it would be really helpful to provide some reimbursements to commissioners who are going out. And I think it's an access thing too. Because say for myself, I work for a small nonprofit, not making the big bucks. Being able to provide those reimbursements would be super helpful, and childcare for the hearing for those of us who have small children would be really helpful. And I think that just increases access to be on the commission. Lower to moderate income women can be here and will be supported by the commission, especially working mothers as well. And I also wanted to share a comment about the interns. Have we ever considered either providing any guidance or a training or something about how the regionals can partner with colleges and universities? Because what we do at my organization is we often have partnerships with those colleges and universities that provide us some interns who either take part in an internship as part of a class or they do it for college credit. When I was doing my master's program, that's what I did too. I was able to get college credit for doing like a 30-hour-a-week internship with a vetted either state or NGO at the time. And I think something like that could be really beneficial and helpful for all parties. For us, we get an intern who's working with us and learning, and we're not necessarily paying them a large amount of money. And then also the university gets the partnership with the commission. And if any staff would like to talk further about it, happy to do that, because again, we do that with my organization.
Thank you. Commissioner Fleckner?
So this, thank you, and sorry about that. So these are the thoughts that I have real quick, is that I see, okay, the internship program with the MCSW has been around for 20 plus years. It's been hugely successful because it's been both for credit and paid in both ways. And bringing it on to the regional, I see that as an extension. And it doesn't, definitely to Danelle's point, is that the buck stops here, as the saying goes, with commissioners. But I see that interns assist with, provides support to the commissioners. And because we're the Mass Commission on the Status of Women and we support women and girls, is that, and you'll see something else later on, is creating this internship and mentoring and bringing young women up to the point where they're learning. So when they graduate or whatever they're doing for a certificate program, that they're having hands-on experience. And if the budget allows within that region, to Nina's point, to pay an intern that minimal amount that we're talking about, 18 to 20 some odd dollars, but it is the intern that is providing the support. To Danella's point, I don't see the intern being on the front line. They shouldn't be, because we as commissioners own it and we need to own it.
Thank you. Do any other commissioners have any thoughts or questions or feedback?
I think what I'd like to do, because we've only got about 20 minutes left, I think we only have 10 minutes left with Rebecca, is to take this as an action item, which would be two parts. One would be to ensure that the criteria is transparent and laid out when we're considering the grant, so that we make sure that we're taking all this context into consideration. And then the second is that perhaps the Finance Committee take a pass at looking at the budget, and now that we have the money, coming back with what the options are to support commissioners in staying over for the upcoming hearing that's further away. So we could do that and then move on, and then we'll take it as an action item going forward. And then Rebecca, I know we've only got you for about 9 more minutes. Can you skip ahead to your agenda item, please?
Sure, and I don't think we have a lot to talk about from the program and planning perspective, and so I'm just trying to find my agenda, which has somehow disappeared from my computer. So I think the 2 items were just that we have the Pittsfield hearing coming up. That's going to be in a little over a month on the 17th. We have our location, we have our save the date. I understood from our program and planning meeting on Tuesday that those materials were going to be finalized, I think, yesterday. So hopefully we'll be soon getting our toolkit for helping with the publicizing of that, and then the staff have well in hand reaching out to electeds, partners, etc., to do the traditional outreach from that end. So I have, been listening in on the conversations about reimbursement, and you know, travel. So that's, you know, is definitely something that's important to consider. And if folks need to include me in any way in those conversations, happy to hear it, but otherwise hoping to see many folks out in Pittsfield for an in-person hearing, although I think we will also have a hybrid option. The next, the registration link is live, says Shy, so that's great to hear. That was contemplated. I'm glad to hear it followed through. So hopefully we'll be seeing things on social media we can share and other ways that we can get out the word about Pittsfield. And it was interesting at the Provincetown hearing, one of our reps said that, you know, that from Pittsfield to Provincetown is like a saying that, you know, he used, and I was very excited that, you know, we were obviously on board with that. So going to the far ends of the Commonwealth is very exciting. The other item on the agenda, as Meredith alluded in the chat, is that we have a couple of votes that we'll be putting forward at the full commission, although this committee doesn't need to do anything, where we're going to be recommending 3 current regional commissioners for reappointment. And then next month we'll be taking on, I think, a much bigger load of reappointments and initial appointments for various vacancies. And Tina has many spreadsheets. Everything is beautiful. So program and planning will have a bigger report to make on that front next month. But for now, we are just going to put forward the 3 people, as Meredith says, 2 from Easter Regional and 1 from, I thought it was Hamden.
Hamden, sorry.
Yeah,
It is
it's
Hamden.
okay. They're right next to each other. And 1 from Hamden, where we, program and planning has recommended the reappointment, and we'll ask the full commission for their agreement at our meeting next week. I think that's it for program and planning that was on the agenda. We are also working on the LGBTQ report. Shai and Shalaya and I are going to start having regular meetings, and then to the extent that we need a bigger group to advise and help with that, we will definitely let folks know. You know, we have many exciting events, some of which we've already discussed, including the 25th anniversary. Jelly is getting started with their first meeting soon, and everything is going very well. So if anybody else has anything from the program and planning perspective to add, you know, love to hear it, but I think that things are rolling along and everything is well. Janella, yes.
So a couple things. Are we doing Advocacy Day this year?
Yes,
Okay, and we already have a date for that.
we do, but I don't have it on. I can pull up, we have our program and planning calendar that was on the agenda May 24th. Thank you, Tina. Now I remember saying that because it's my anniversary. So.
And this, happy anniversary. This may not
It's in
fall
there.
in our wheelhouse. It may be more in Shaitia's wheelhouse. But are all of the meetings been scheduled with our appointing authorities? And when is that going to happen, particularly given you're going to have a new administration?
Yeah.
So are those,
That's not a program and planning function as far as I know, but I'm happy to open up the space to Shaitia or others to weigh in on when those meetings will take place.
so usually because the annual report came out, so usually by now we would have scheduled to go and meet with all of our appointing authorities. Now I heard earlier that there's a meeting just with the caucus, but we would go and talk about what we've accomplished in the past year. And I noticed that it's probably been a year. I'm not even sure any of those meetings have happened, and you kind of probably should get those to happen before the budget comes, so you're not doing it all at once. So if that hasn't happened, Madam Chair, I think there need to be a meeting scheduled, at least with the Speaker, the Senate President, the Caucus of Women's Legislators, and I would be on the front door to get a meeting with Maura for the end of January as you're getting in with appointments. And I don't know also, Shaitia, who has vacancies, but I would try to get those meetings before it's budget time, so it doesn't look like you're just going in, you know, around the budget time. So I just wondered if those were scheduled. Clearly the governor is changing, but.
Yeah, I had a meeting with the governor's office yesterday to talk about the appointments, but also to introduce myself as the new executive director. And they let me know that they're filling their appointments, or they're working on filling their appointments. Hope to hear back on those confirmations soon. And they were, what's the word I want to use? They reminded me that there is only a certain amount of days that the governor is in office, and he will do his best to support any initiatives that come up between now and then. And then there is work. I'm looking to identify who's going to be on that transition search team, or not transition search team, but the transition team. So the team that's going to transition in with the new leadership. But that's really hard to kind of nail down at this point. In the meantime, I did reach out to Senate President's office, the Speaker's office, and the caucus to start initiating conversations for putting down a meeting, but have not had any success in the date setting. The only folks that got back to me was the Senate President, and they're looking at times next week. I'm
But
happy to
that's
share.
not gonna give us enough time, right? That's not gonna give us, and I don't know if that's for you to meet them, but what I'm talking about is usually the commissioners go in and they meet with their appointing authorities. All of us are invited, but certainly front and center. So to me, for example, if you're having trouble getting that type of meeting, your chairwoman is an appointee of the Senate President. There should be no reason, Audrey Hall is very close with the Senate President. There should be no reason that meeting can't happen. It's not just the one-on-one with you, it's with the commissioners. It's not the regular monthly meeting with the caucus people, it's with all the commissioners. And Mariano, Nina, you should know, Mariano has not given us a meeting since he's been Speaker of the House. But clearly you have a great relationship with Mariano. I've now interfaced with him 5 times in the past 6 months. We need a meeting with Mariano. We have not had a meeting with him. And I'm not talking about you one-on-one. I'm talking about us as commissioners. Remember, the Senate President and the Speaker are going to be big whips on the budget. So, and it can't be a week because we need to put slides together and bring our annual report or what have you. So if you're having trouble getting those meetings, I would suggest that the treasurer leans into her relationship and that the chairwoman leans into her relationship, because these meetings need to happen. Sure, we could wait. And then Aisha, your vice chair, is with the caucus. I don't know what this little meeting these caucus people are having, but we need to have the official meeting with all commissioners with the caucus. So as an executive committee member, I would say work with Nina first for one, clearly Sarah, and then Aisha for the other one. And then of course we could wait for the transition of the governor's office. And then I have one last question. How many vacancies do we have at the statewide level for commissioners?
We have 3 technically.
And are all of those all with the governor or 2?
Cool.
One is with the governor, 2 are with the caucus.
Okay.
So Shaitia, if you could start working on getting those, and if you're not getting them, then working with us to do that. I didn't know you were having trouble getting meetings. I'd be happy to take that. I have direct contact with their office. I'm happy to do that. Yeah. Oh, you just got muted again. I'm sorry.
I don't think that she has trouble getting the meetings. I think that a lot of people are just waiting until they see who the governor is. Yeah, I mean, we all believe that Maura is going to win, but we don't know that. And I think I know a lot of people are just kind of waiting to see what's going to happen. We don't know if Mariano is going to get reelected to Speaker of the House. So there's a lot of things that people are just trying to fall back and see. And so it's not, I don't think it's about the trouble. They're probably just not responding at the time or slip that we would want them to. So we can only go by what they give us at this point until things kind of transition and then see.
So I think it's worth a shot in case they do get that at minimum, even if they get reelected and they hesitate to get a meeting with us, they'll remember that we were trying. So maybe just stay kind of on the radar. In the meantime, though, I also don't want a meeting next week without talking points already ready that people have looked at. because I want to represent well, and with only a year here, I won't be able to do that without some talking points in advance. So if you could help work on that, that would be great.
Yeah, this meeting I referenced for next week is just a quick kind of intro meeting. It's only 30 minutes to introduce myself and get them the
Gotcha.
updated expectations of commissioners. And I was going to use that as like the connecting point for those future meetings where we do want to, you know, have some commissioners and talking about our successes and even mentioning our budget requests. So I'm just trying to make connections.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
So Aisha, I didn't realize that. Are you saying both Mariano and Spilka are up for re-election and may not be Senate
Well,
president?
yeah, they get elected to that
They get
seat
elected.
every, like, when they're all, every the term. So they'll there for 2 years, and then once they win, then they can get reelected. I mean, I'm not saying they won't, but most times it goes through election process.
Mhm.
So we're not sure. I'm not sure if Representative, I don't know how to pronounce his name, last name.
Mariano.
I might mess it up. What is it?
Mariano.
Mariano. If he has an opponent, Representative, is it Michael Witz or something like that?
Michael Wick. Mhm.
Yeah, so I know that there's been talk about him taking over Ways and Means. I don't know if he's gonna wait it out till Mariano leaves. So I don't know, but this is like what I'm hearing. So we just have to wait and see. But if, as you stated, Commissioner Clark, that the chairwoman goes and speaks to Spilka, I guess, you know, you could do that.
Yeah.
And see if she responds to you, since you know, as was stated, you're her
Even if
appointee.
these meetings are in December, the
Mhm.
point I'm trying to make, and I know you're new and Sarah's new and Shaitia's new, clearly Mary Ann and Meredith knows what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is usually all the commissioners go and meet with the appointing authorities. We talk about what we did the last fiscal year. We bring our annual report and we kind of talk about what our plans are within the current fiscal year. And they get to ask all the commissioners questions. Again, usually their specific appointees are front and center. And my concern is that has not happened. And then you kind of want to get ahead of the February or March budget cycle. So that's what I'm talking about. So whenever the people are in place, but it just needs to happen. We don't want to be invisible to these people. And we know the caucus ladies told us that their chairwomanship ends December,
Mhm.
but maybe by now they have a sense of who's succeeding them.
It's alphabetical.
Oh, meaning who's up next? Hannah Kane or somebody?
Mhm.
Okay,
So-
Oh, I thought that was a joke.
I'm
No.
not sure.
sorry,
It's
Mary.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
they still do it alphabetically. They give it their way. They feel that process is a smooth way to do their co-chairmanships. So it would go alphabetical. I don't remember if it's in, yeah, because it's in reverse. So they went from M, so it's in the reverse. So, and then you have the option to say yay or nay, but it is alphabetical. Yeah, so
I
yeah.
gotta say, I've never heard that before. And not only are you going alphabetical, but you're gonna do it in reverse order, because that's just a fascinating process.
Yeah.
Mary Ann, your hand is up.
I was just thinking when we make the call and we talk to the chief of staff or whoever, the legislative aide, is that maybe we could say it's part of our enabling legislation, we're required to do this. Kind of to Danella's point is that we're not just asking because we just like to meet, but we're required. This is part of our enabling legislation. So maybe that might spark it a little bit more, if we haven't yet said that.
All right, thank you very much. And I do appreciate the information about trying to get on the radar now. Even in the transition, the more we kind of reach out, the better, because we are quickly approaching not only the election, but the new budget cycle. So that's really helpful. We've only got a few minutes left, so I want to turn it over to Meredith, and then Mary Ann, you had one agenda item on there, so we're going to try to get through those pretty quickly. Thank you.
Thank you. For those of you who attended Provincetown, you know we've been working diligently and doing what we can around the sexual assault nurse examiners issue that's happening in Cape and the Islands. We have sent out our statement to our letter of request of meeting to Commissioner Cook and Director Joan Shan, to be able to sit down with them. We talked to the Telesane director and we understand her perspective on it. We have seen that DPH has sent a response to Cape and the Islands delegation, the Cape delegation, informing them that they are not, that their request for extension has not been accepted, has been denied. They don't believe that there's a need for the extension because they believe that the lack of retention and recruitment for the same nurses has been evident to them over the years. And so the Cape delegation is going back again, and as we're doing our part to also support the Cape delegation and the Cape and Islands Regional, we're waiting for Director Sham or Commissioner Cook to let us know when we would be able to sit with them to understand their decision on this of going to Telesane. We are hoping that we'll get a response soon, because they responded to us quickly when we sent the letter, you know, so just getting them to accept a date to meet is what we're waiting on now. And also, so that's where we are with the same nurses issue. And we, Shaitia, did you, Rebecca's not here. We forgot to include, it was something last minute too, Chairwoman. We had an opportunity, we have an opportunity to sign on to some amicus briefs that are being written by the National Women's Law Center. And I get those emails as president of the National, and I've shared them with the Mass Commission. This past year, we missed out on a phenomenal opportunity of signing on to prevent Ubers and the Lyfts and all of the ride shares from putting the gig question on the ballot this year. And we signed on with the National Women's Law Center and was able to stop that here in Massachusetts. But the Massachusetts Commission was not able to get it done because they didn't have enough time for a meeting with the executive or with the full commission. So what I'm bringing to the executive today, and with hopes that you ladies are able to talk about it, is that we received another invite to sign on to 2 amicus briefs that the National Women's Law Center is doing. Rebecca and Shaitia received the email. Rebecca looked at it. She thought this would be a good thing for us as the MCSW to be able to look at how do we support and sign on to these and what's the process. So Legislative and Public Policy is going to look at how we do the process, but the executive committee, I wanted to bring it to you guys now, because the 2 briefs that are out there now to be signed on to has a deadline of the end of next week. So it's before our next full commission meeting. So my hope is that you'll be able to look at it. Marianne, past Chair Clark and Vice Chair Miller, look at the amicus brief and see what you ladies think about it, because they're right now, one of them is focused on the sports ban for transgender girls in the schools across in two different states, I think it was. So that's something I just wanted you guys to look at and to see if this is something that MCSW wants to start looking at, because they impact women and girls, not just, and if we are able to support these different states, then Massachusetts will have groundwork for if anything like that happens here, we know where to go. So that's it from Legislative and Public Policy for now.
Did those go out yet, the briefs?
Shai, I don't think Shai sent it to, did you send it to her yet?
I didn't get to send it yet,
Okay.
but
Okay,
I will send it.
So we'll be aware of the quick turnaround once they go out. That'd be great. Thank you.
I will say I did indicate our interest as a commission based off of the feedback I got from Commissioner Tuitt and Rebecca Baxt. So I will forward the details to the group and then we can decide from there.
Great. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Meredith before we wrap up with Marianne?
I just wanted to quickly add is that it's not having SANES, especially Cape and Islands area, from a geographic standpoint, it makes it so much more difficult to go to court and to be able as a survivor, as a victim. It's just
Yeah.
discouraging. Okay, that's it.
From our understanding and all the meetings that we've had, they've never missed a case. And because they've never missed a case, and because they're cross-trained, they're cross adult and PD, that their work is good work. But because they have low numbers, people don't report or show up, and and as they said, most of the visitors are tourists. They go back to their towns or whatever. So they're looking at that. And that's why we want to get more conversation on why, DPH thinks that's fair. Because 65 hospitals are telesane across the Commonwealth, and most of those telesane are in rural community areas.
Yeah, if you haven't yet had a chance to read the letter we wrote in response after the Provincetown hearing, it really is, I think, powerful. You guys did a nice job of articulating all of the harm that would be caused if they were to stick with what the proposal is. So thank you very much for that. Marianne, I'm going to leave it with you, and we're a few minutes over, so I'm just going to ask that you keep it brief, and then we'll bring it to the full commission. That will close out.
Sure, absolutely. So real quick, I am going to share the screen, and a big, huge thank you to Shai. We had this meeting a couple of weeks ago, and again, a big thanks to Shai, because what you're physically going to see is something that Shai created from our conversation. So can you all see this?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right. So pretty much most of us know what the Speakers Bureau is, but in summary, it's just a collection of speakers to go out and talk about certain subjects. It could be state or a regional commissioner. We also work with partner organizations like the Treasurer's Office, and we represent the commission at public and actually private engagements. And we also want to participate, and we do, in educational programs, for example, the community conversations. And also is helping and partnering with these community and other organizations to gather information for future reports that helps the legislature. And it gives us an opportunity to connect with emerging leaders, and through a mentorship program that we actually want to introduce as part of the Speakers Bureau. So here we are, 18 years ago, in 2004, we created the Speakers Bureau. It was led over the years by Liz Hart, Chris Chanya-Sulkett, Penny Blaisdell. It became part of the planning committee, program planning, a couple of years ago. And here we are in 2022. So that's a little bit of the history. It's actually 18 years old. Three main goals is, the first goal is we educate, we engage, we galvanize the public on issues relating to women and girls. The second part is we're able to develop those relationships with these organizations to advance these common goals, like pay equity. And also is back to the connecting with emerging leaders, change makers. Over the years, we've become representing just not only women, but women and girls of the Commonwealth. And these are emerging leaders, in addition to our change makers. There's a process. We try to make it simple, straightforward, is that a potential host submits the request. And we identify through that request, and what they're requesting is that we then reach out to commissioners and regional commissioners and say, so-and-so with this organization is looking for a speaker or looking for a mentorship or opportunity. So a little bit further on this process is that here, far left, you see the host organization connects with us through our website, calls us. They complete the request form, and then the staff reviews it, follows up with them if any information is needed, and then shares it with us, with the commissioners. And then a speaker is identified, and the staff works with both the commission and the organization, facilitating connection, and prepares the presentation. The event takes place. What's key also in the end is that the speaker completes a report form. How did it go? Did it work well? Did it not work well? What could be different? We always want to learn. We always want to be better. And then staff also conducts any necessary follow-up. The next slide is about us targeting, us doing the outreach, a process where we want to connect with the treasurer's office, for example, on pay equity. And we reach out to these organizations and we connect with a potential host, a partnership. And then again, once the speaker is identified, the staff continues to facilitate that connection and prepares the presentation. Again, working with everyone. The event takes place, the speaker completes the report, and the staff also conducts any necessary follow-up. These are 8 examples from last year, is that pay equity, LGBTQ+, COVID, economic impacts, racial equity, childcare roundtable, women in the workforce, gender equity, childcare common start. Also MassDOT, the Women's Employee Resource Group, International Women's Day, Common Start Again, in Action Rally. So these are some examples that some commissioners represented the commission. This is a sample speaking abstract. This was from Nina Campbell when she was presenting on equal pay. If you go to the 4th line, the quote, "The new Massachusetts equal pay law, 100 years in the making." That's what Nina spoke on. And then you'll see in the last line is that MCSW also partners with the Treasurer's Office, AAUW, the Massachusetts Community Colleges, to offer salary negotiation workshops. Those are the partnerships that we talk about. Resources, we provide resources. We provide a boilerplate presentation that can be adapted to any audience. We assist in drafting the remarks, talking points. We support coordinating the event, the logistics, and really anything else that happens that needs to happen to make it a successful event. And so the next slide is this pilot program that we want to introduce. Again, it's the change makers. It's our emerging leaders. We want to have a mentorship program, and it shows that a mentor or sponsor helps people land that raise, get that promotion, advance their education, their experience, that next job, their assignments in their current job. And so in prospect research for speaking opportunities, the staff will also be researching mentorship opportunities to connect with our future leaders. And then once those opportunities are identified, we will be notified. So-and-so is an emerging leader in the science of engineering and biological research on COVID as it relates to future pregnancy, whatever that is. And a commissioner says, oh, that's my background. I've been researching this, and I would love to mentor this person. So we opt in when these opportunities, these mentorship opportunities become available. And that is it. So hopefully that was quick enough. And any questions, or we want to stop as it is 5:42.
So I do want to leave a few minutes for questions. I know that we're over. And that was a presentation that clearly was well done and took a lot of time to present. So I want to make sure that we have time to think it over. And I want to make sure I understand the ask. So the ask is to expand the current speakers program to include mentorships. Is that the ask?
Correct.
Okay. Do we need a vote on that from this committee, or do we bring that to the full commission?
That's a good question. I don't know, because it's a program that already exists, but maybe it would be nice for the executive committee to vote on it so that we can present it to the full commission that way.
So why don't we do that? Can I get a motion to expand into a pilot mentorship program? Mr. Miller moves. Yeah. Can I get a second?
I'll
Meredith
second.
seconds. Okay. So if we could plan, I'm sorry, all in favor? I know Rebecca suggested that we use the hand raising function, that we could just do this. And so rather than calling out names, you can record those names with hands up. Do we still have quorum? I don't know if
Yes.
that's a quorum or not. Yeah, we do.
Yes.
Okay.
With Mary Ann, she's representing the
Mar-
treasurer.
Mary
Oh, I
Ann, do you
can,
have-
oh, I can vote? Okay, because I'm not on the EC.
did I think you're the proxy for Rebecca is what Shaitia was saying?
Oh,
Or
got it.
treasurer.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Okay, I will,
All right.
hold on, I have to raise my hand.
While she's looking for it.
I found my smiley face. Okay, there we go.
Got it. Any opposed? Any abstain? All right, so it passes. Shaitia, will you help me by, let's leave a little bit more room on the agenda for the full commission so we can ask questions and et cetera about this in particular. All right. Excellent. So I'm going, unless there's any other burning topics, I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion that we adjourn.
All right, all in favor, everybody raise their hands. Aye. Bye, guys. Have a great night. We'll see you Thursday. Thank you. All right, bye-bye.